Ed, I've made you the co-host of the meeting.
All right. Awesome.
And we are live streaming on YouTube as well. And here in a couple of minutes, I'll, if you don't see the record or you don't hear the record notification come on, just let me know and I'll make sure I push record.
Okay, we are recording then.
Yeah, unless you've got a reason we shouldn't.
Well, I don't.
Okay.
Just beat the B chat. This isn't B chat, this is Queen chat, but B chat. Our rule has always been it's been open, non-recorded.
Right.
So you can talk freely, for those who maybe go off label or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm cool either way because I don't think we're going to be doing anything that requires any chat for off label.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Fair enough. I'll go
Yeah.
back.
Why is there such a production across the bottom of my screen here?
Why is there such a what?
There's a serious amount of icons across the bottom of my screen.
They're actually always there. If you move your mouse up, it'll hide them.
Yeah, I don't ever remember seeing them, but however, 90% of the time I'm on my phone, which I don't.
Well, yeah, they're there. They're just well hidden on your phone.
Yeah, let me see. Where is the there's caption report. Yeah, there's the chat. Okay, all right.
You're looking for share?
No. Looking. No, I just want to. When people put shit in the chat, I need to know where the chat is.
Ah, yes, right.
Yeah, chat. I see participant. Okay, yep. App whiteboard. Ooh, I don't know what a whiteboard is, but that looks fun.
Yeah.
Uh,
So whoever logged in as 541718 is
George.
Thank you, George.
That's my prisoner number.
Yeah, that's true. I should have remembered that.
I don't know where that number came from. One day that just started popping up as my Zoom name. I was like 54718. I was like,
Who is that? Oh, that's me.
what does that mean?
Yeah, I have no idea.
So where is here? Under more?
Well, there should be a green share right at the bottom
Oh,
of your screen.
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, let's
Big
look.
green.
This says share screen.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and talk to someone else. My bad.
My bad.
Might as well. Where's the stop video? Oh, one that says stop video. Got it.
The big CCBA night.
Oh man, I'm gonna go get my CCBA mug then.
You gotta get your CCBA mug. I should have my CCBA mug too. We all got to bring out our CCBA swag tonight.
Yeah.
I've got my Air Force swag on, so there.
Air Force swag.
With
You
chickens eating.
Oh, these guys are so adorable.
You got CCBA hat, don't you, Mark?
I do, but it's not up here, and I'm not going to go get it.
Charlie's on. Charlie.
Charlie, I think he even changed his picture to where he holds queen cells.
Charlie's always got the same queen cells. He's proud of those ones that he shook, and they're like 5 inches long. Charlie.
Yeah. I like them pinky.
Next year.
I just checked mine tonight.
I should show my typical 60%. Oh, I'm proud of this one. Here's 18 out of 30. I'm good. What do you get, Ed? What
Looks like
28.
No, I only did 15 this week.
Oh,
you're breaking up a little bit, Ed.
Most likely.
That's smart to only do 15, I think, at this point.
Yeah, they're it's getting tougher and tougher for them to feel inspired to.
Keep doing this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a 15 out of 15, but
Really, 15 out of 15?
yeah, normally I get 16 out of 15, but tonight it
16
was,
out of 15.
yeah, tonight it was only 15. And I just put last week I put two new frames of fruit in there to really energize it.
It's like I got 15 out. I didn't even try this week, and I still got 15. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I sort of tried.
Well,
Well, I'm like super focused, and I was like, I
Yeah.
got to get it. And I end up with 60% this year.
I'm getting it now where I'm trying to see how small I can graft. I'm like, all right, I can, because if I don't see anything in there, because even though I know, yeah, the white fluid or the clear fluid, try to go for the clear fluid ones now.
I wonder if when the larvae hatches, is that I don't know, hatches, whether or not there's a little bit of clear fluid in that egg or not. 'Cause
So
sometimes there's just a drop, right, with the littlest larvae. And I was like, I think that came from an egg.
yeah, so it's actually interesting because they actually technically don't hatch per se.
Okay.
The egg just dissolves.
Okay. Right. I knew that sort of.
Yeah.
So you wonder
And
if there's a little fluid left around it when it dissolves or not.
possibly. I mean, but you're right. I've seen what you're talking about
See what I'm talking about? It's just like a microliter.
because workers get fed
Yeah.
on demand. They never have an overabundance of food.
There's 10 people, no more than 10 people on.
Yeah, well, it'll catch up. We've got
14.
that's right.
Mark, people are trying the link and it's not working. I don't know why they would be having trouble.
Well, the link that Carissa sent out didn't work. The one that you sent out did.
Oh, Ed's saying that the one you sent out, Krista, didn't work, but the one I sent out did. And
Yes.
the one on the website does, but that's only accessible to people on the website. So I don't know what happened to the link that you sent out.
Yeah, the one she sent out didn't work for me.
Yeah.
There's consensus that something was wrong with the link that you sent out. Should you do anything? Maybe
Well, that's what I think. When we start getting around, only 25 people show up. Maybe we should resend the link.
yeah, just resend it. Yeah, just resend it. I mean, people are figuring it out, so and even Charlie figured it out. So
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mute George.
I
There you
saved
go.
my emails.
It's bust on Charlie night tonight. I don't know why I'm doing that, but cool.
Samsung SMA53. You got a name?
I didn't even get that. I didn't even get that update from Carissa today. So it's weird how sometimes you get stuff and sometimes you don't get stuff from the club.
Yeah, your link's not working, George.
The one I sent out works. The one that
Yeah,
Carissa sent out does not work, I hear.
I tried them all. I went back to your emails. I couldn't get it to work. And
Are you serious? Then how
Yeah.
do you get on?
well, Carissa sent me a link, another text message with a link because I sent an email out to her. So I'm just hoping we get people from the other clubs if the link isn't going to work.
Well, that's that. I usually
I used the updated email from George. That went right through.
Maybe because I got in the first time I couldn't get in and it kicked me out. I don't know, but hopefully well, David got in, so hopefully the link works.
Well,
Yeah.
it looks like the email that we sent out, the email program changes the links, and we didn't anticipate that. And the link that we sent out to our members is not working. I got in.
Oh, okay.
I
I don't know
apologize.
what the link is. Carissa just sent me a text message.
So
So
we've got How did I mess this up, Mark?
I don't think you messed it up, George. I think, but
Go ahead.
I know that the YouTube streaming is working.
Oh, good.
Anyway,
All right, so I'm going to start record unless
That's-
there is any
Yeah,
particular reason
just-
not to.
Yeah, FYI, everyone, this one will be recorded. We're going to be covering some pretty cool information that, we may want to go back to later in our lives. There it is.
I don't know, Ed, do you think we should give him a few minutes just because?
Yeah, I mean, because I think normally I would be outside in the apiary, but
Just
I wanted
because
to.
we sent people links that don't work.
A minute from Gabrielle House spoke about the attacks that took place.
Yeah, I asked Carissa if she would send out a new link, so maybe then I can copy and paste it and send it to my
Number one,
club.
Carissa might send another link. So they're saying that people are having a hard time getting in. I got in with George's updated. Did you have an email that says? George
Yeah, I had an
updated?
email that said updated, so I guess that works. I got in through the website, so I went, again, for our club members, they can go in, but people who aren't in our club would have trouble accessing the event calendar on our website, so. You
I
know,
I just pasted in the ID number and the passcode because the link didn't work. But that got me here.
yeah, well, I apologize. I don't,
Oh, that's okay.
I really did try, Charlie, you know what I mean? Like, I did,
I know you did, George.
but anyway,
So we have about 27 participants currently on.
we'll get more.
That's
That's enough to get started.
That is enough to get started. I agree.
So welcome, everybody. This is Queen Chat tonight. I'm George Datto. I'm president of the CCBA, the one who can't figure out how to send out the correct link. But I guess all you figured it out. It's the ones that aren't here that I should apologize to. Well, this is we decided to we usually do beat chat on Friday night within the CCBA. We've been doing that for the last basically since the pandemic. Every Friday night for the last 4 years, we do beat chat on Friday, 7 and 9. But tonight, I sort of about a week or so ago, I said, "Hey Ed, do you want to do Queen Chat?" You know, because we've been chatting about this idea for a while, just because we know that we have a lot of people in the CCBA that are interested in queens. We have a queen program. We raise queens, and Ed has definitely taken his queen rearing to the next level. So. And then I thought, well, as long as we're doing it, why don't we make the party bigger, right? So why don't we invite all our neighboring friends from Philly and Monco and Berks and Bucks and make it a bigger party. So hopefully, welcome to those of you who are from the other clubs and welcome to Queen Chat. So tonight we have one lead, one moderator, one host, and that's Ed. So Ed's going to sort of set the stage of what's to be expected and what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to sort of just hang out and mute people that can't figure out how to mute themselves. So again, thank you all for coming. And Ed Sharp, Ed's a member of the CCBA. He's a board member of the CCBA. A lot of you know Ed from his work on fixing anything that's broken and also making queens. So truly a valuable member, somebody that I lean on a lot when something's broken or when I need some queens or in general when I just want to chat about what the CCBA is doing or what direction we're heading. So I'm thrilled that he agreed to do Queen Chat tonight. I've been hunting him down for a while to do this, and I hope we all have a good time. That's all. That's your intro, Ed.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Just like George said, this is going to be Queen Chat. Now, this is scheduled from 7 to 9. That's 2 hours. And 2 hours obviously is not enough time to cover A to Z when it comes to queens. So I'm going to throw out some topics. It's going to be an open chat. We're gonna mute people when they forget they're live. But it's going to be an open chat that you can unmute and provide input. So I'm going to throw out a couple topics. There's 4 major topics when it comes to queens. You have queen selection. Like if you're making your own queens, you got to know what you want in a queen. The second part of queens is once you find the queen that you want to propagate from, your next thing would be to actually make the queens themselves. So that's another process. You can either graft or walkaways, so there are several ways to make the queens. Third is getting them mated. How do you want to put them in mating boxes? Do you want to run them in a 10 frame, a nuke, however? So that's another discussion to be had. And then I think final is once they are mated, is what do you do with them? How do you get them into your hive? There's just as many ideas of how to introduce a queen, whether it be a virgin or a mated queen, into a hive or a cell, as there is types of bees out there. So, those are your four major points when it comes to queens. This time of year, obviously, the queen rearing is dying down, if not already stopped. Some of us overachievers like myself are still hanging on as long as we can because that's what we do. The smarter beekeepers have already closed up their queen rearing shops. So talking about queen selection for breeding is not going to be super productive. Same with rearing the queens. How am I going to make the queens? Again, not super productive. However, the one that is going to be productive right now, since everyone's starting to do their mite treatments and killing queens, and it's getting late in the season. If you do have to replace a queen or find the queen, how are we going? How do you want to introduce that queen into your colony?
Hey, Ed.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're getting feedback. Like, when you turn your head, your sound kind of goes away.
Here,
for
I'm
some
going to
reason.
do something. I have a separate microphone. I'm just going to unplug to see if this helps.
Okay. And
How about-
it seems to only happen when you turn your head. You kind of like go away.
Yeah, well, I'm an Android, so is that any better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay, so I'm going to use the camera that came with the computer.
Turn your head and talk.
Can you hear me now? How about?
Oh
better.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this is my camera side.
It's much better side, Ed.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Anyway.
So is the back of your head that may be better.
Yeah, or the empty top. So the one it's most important as of right now is if I have to replace a queen and I'm able to get my hands on a queen, how do I get that queen into a colony? Because there are some people like myself, we are still making cells, virgins, and some of us will carry mated queens for sale. I think Mike Auckland up at Bee-Works, he still may have a few mated queens available. With the different mite treatments are a little harsher on the bees than others and can cause queen loss. Nobody wants to go into August without a queen, that's for sure. By now, most of your stuff should be queen right. If not, you want to start looking for a queen or figure out what's going on. So I'm gonna tell you some of the ways I do it, and then I'll open it up to anyone else to how they do it. So typically when I'm introducing a mated queen, there's two ways I'll do it. If I'm introducing it to a colony that's already been queenless for a while, it's easy to put in just a direct release where I take the frame out. I look for the frame of the youngest bees I can find, and I use a spray bottle with water. I don't have it with me. Spray down the side of the frame, spray down the queen, direct release the queen. Typically, if they're desperate for a queen, there's usually no issues at all. However, if I'm requeening, if I just pulled the queen out, there's still opportunity. They're not hopelessly queenless, which I'm assuming that most people know what that means, but if not, hopelessly queenless means that they have no ability to make a queen. Ability being they have no material, no resources to make a queen. There's no larvae young enough. When they get desperate, they pick larvae that can actually be a little bit older than it should be. But so when they're still just queenless, I typically will use the timed release, the JZBZ or the California cages with the candy plug and let them release her. And usually it's about a 3-day release. So that's what. That was no. So that's how I typically release my queens. Dave, you got your hand up. What do you got, buddy?
You keep them in the cage for 3 days, then you expose the candy, or it takes 3 days to get through the candy?
It takes 3 days to a standard JZBZ, a little plastic. It's typically about 3 days worth of candy. The California cages, however, it's usually only about 2. So I only use the JZBZs, and I pull the cap off, and it's almost exactly 3 days.
Okay.
So again, that's how I do it. So that's introducing a mated queen and or a virgin. Anyone else got any different way they're doing it? I know some people use the push-in cages. George, I know you have some experience with the push-in cages. I do not.
Not a lot, honestly. We used the push-in cages out at the mating yard last year where we pulled, when we were running the maiden boxes, we pulled the queen out, and then we had a virgin and put the virgin in underneath the push-in cage. And then 3 days later, we basically went back and released her. And that seemed to work relatively well,
The other way that I've released them is I have those hanging cages, the frame cages. It's like a half frame that has a cage, so it's the whole length of the frame, and then the queen can walk easily. The problem with it, once you open the hatch, you can't get her out, so you have to leave the cage in with the door open. Then you got to circle back and then take the cage out and put another frame in there.
So when you're doing that, how long did you
usually 3 days? Same 3 days.
Okay, and then you direct release.
No, they're really hard to get out of those cages because there's only a little tiny door, and trying to get her out is almost impossible. I've tried it. So then you have to open the door up and then let them eventually come out, and then you got to circle back to take that hanging frame out. I think Didon is the only company that sells them, but it essentially looks like a half frame or like a half of a medium, and it's a cage the whole length, so she can walk back and forth. I did that once this year with a hive that was pretty aggressive, and I took the queen out. I went back in 3 or 4 days. They were still really aggressive to the queen. So I thought, the heck is going on? And I had to suit all the way up, and I've been trying to go, as you know, I've been trying to go jacketless, and then sure enough, I found that old queen still in the hive. Somehow I didn't kill her enough, and she got back in. But as soon as I killed her, and then they, 3 more days, that they finally accepted the new queen. But
okay. So. Okay. Anyone else? I'll write it down. That's the accepted 3 ways of introducing a queen. Apparently, the only 3 ways.
I got the better be full cage where you put the whole frame in and drop the whole frame in with the VR.
The metal prison looking cage.
The metal prison. So of course there's 2 different sizes. One that the workers can go in and out for if you're grafting from that queen, and a different size cage spacing if you're just introducing a queen and you want the kind of like a push-in cage response.
So she can lay on the frame, but the bees can't get in. Right. But the problem is that if she lays eggs, then there's no one to take. If the eggs emerge, and there's no way to start to.
Well, no, you want to put a frame in there where you have emerging brood.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's just like a push-in cage.
Okay.
Nice. That's a great option. I had the queen excluder cage that I intended on using for my timing for my grafting. That they're still sitting downstairs.
So Mike, help me understand. So you use that cage and you put a frame of emerging brood in there, and you put the queen, just direct release her on that frame into the hive?
Yeah.
And then she'll start to lay on that frame.
Yeah.
And you're doing that just in case. Why?
Well, uh, so especially if you're introducing a Russian, or something where they're really hostile to, changing the mix up.
Mm-hmm.
Or I got it for if I want to use if I ever pay big money for a breeder queen, because I've had kind of mixed success with the pushing cages.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them burrow underneath. I've had them pop the cage off. I've had, different things. And while we were at the Western Conference, my wife seen the frame, the cage where you put him in. So so she can lay and I can get her the perfect larvae to graft from. And then they had another cage right next to it. So she said, well, we need both. But that's it's in lieu of the pushing cage. It's the same idea.
Yeah,
Nice.
when I used the pushing cages, there was every once in a while I'd get a queen between the pushing cage and the comb. That usually did not result in a good outcome for the queen. So not that happened much, but every once in a while, for whatever reason, the queen will try to run. You push in the cage and you get the queen underneath the cage in the metal. So that's not good. And yeah, I mean, you got to push that cage in really good, otherwise they will burrow underneath. And sometimes that pushing cage will also move, like you said, like if you move for whatever reason, but I would say 90% of the time, in a pushing cage, what we did is just basically used number 8 hardware cloth and basically made a 3-inch square that we just sort of, pushed it into the comb and put the queen underneath it. So
Yeah.
it worked. And we always put the queen on a little bit of food, so there was some nectar where we put the pushing cage, and also tried to get some brood that was about to emerge. So, we underneath that 3-inch square, we always tried to put some nectar and a few cells of emerging brood. I don't know if it made a difference, Ed, but that was the goal of where we put the pushing cage on the frame.
Yeah, so several of the Man Lake, Better Be, Data End probably as well. They sell these plastic style pushing cages that also have a candy plug area that you can either after day whatever, you can either open the cage up so where she can walk out, or you can have the candy plugs where she's only under the time release, where you don't have to go back to release her.
Let me ask you a question, Ed. So say if you have a hive, right?
Yeah.
And it's the fall and the queen hasn't been great, or it's not producing, or it's defensive, and you go in there and you find that queen, you take the queen out, and you have a queen in a JZBZ cage with candy in it, and you're going to put that queen in at the same time you take the old queen out, right? What would you say the success of that is? And the success, I mean, you go back in a week and you find your new queen that you put in and she's laying, versus, they decide to make their own queen. They started queen cells and they're going to kill that queen. Even though you introduced her in a slow release, they still decide they're going to make their own celling, kill the one you put in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's pretty high there. It's not going to go well. You're trying to do the switcheroo with like a time release, like a JZBZ.
Right.
The nepotism in bees is just insane. A perfect example. If I remove a queen out of a hive and they have, for argument's sake, let's say a 5-frame nuke. This is an example, and it's actually fun to do. Let's say you got a 5-frame nuke. You pull the queen, pull a frame out with the queen and put her somewhere else. Put a frame from another hive in that empty slot that has eggs and larvae on it. They will not build queen cells on that frame. The 4 other frames they will, but the frame that's not theirs, they will not.
It's amazing.
Like you say, the self-preservation of their gene line, maternal line is extremely high. So yeah, to do that, to do the old switcheroo, I personally, if I was doing it with a mating queen, I typically wait till they are hopelessly queenless. You know, when you know, to the point where I'm pulling, I'll wait till they actually make queen cups, you know, roughly 3 to 4 days long, 3 to 4 days old, so that I know that there's not another queen in there. You know, mated queens are expensive for one. They're hard to get, and when you need them, you need them. However, I don't care how well mated, how big, how huge, how pretty, how smelly, whatever she is. If there's an alternate in that box, they will kill whatever you put in there, period. You know, I've heard, you know, horror stories of people buying instrumentally inseminated queens, and they get killed because there's a virgin in there. You know, good breeders, you know, so when you are introducing your queen, I almost always, if it's a mated queen, I will do the frame test with a eggs and larvae. That's the only, that really is the only way to be 100% positive there's not another source of queens in there. If they don't draw it out, I get nervous.
On that note, Ed, the frame that Mike Auckland was talking about, the queen, whatever, the metal thing. Fred Dunn was talking. Fred Dunn, what is it?
This is like this.
Oh, somebody needs to be muted.
I got it.
Anyway, those the queen introduction cages, which is the entire frame that they were just talking about. One of the reasons to use that is if just in case you're not totally sure that, you know, you're queenless, you can use the entire frame, and that's a way to sort of get the new queen pheromone moving around the hive. But then if you go back and check in a week and, you know, without the workers being able to get in there, you have to have some nurse bees in there with her. But if you go back in a week and you check the rest of the hive, and if there's eggs or larvae, then you know that there's a queen there, but yet you still have your new queen protected in that queen frame. You know,
I do, but now you're turning a $50 queen into a $100 queen because you had to buy a stupid queen cage.
Well,
and the original question was aggressive hive. If you've got an aggressive hive, they'll still kill off that queen. If they're able to make a queen cell, they'll kill off that queen as soon as it releases out of that cage.
But the point is that you know that there's another queen in there, and if you want to replace her, then you know you have to find her.
Yeah, but you can do the legwork up front by just simply putting a
right
frame, and it costs you nothing, and you know 100% sure that there is not. Because sometimes even if there's not another queen, if they have the ability to make queens, they will still kill off your queen.
So Ed, the situation I was talking about with this aggressive queen, I had just taken her out. I mean, I literally just squished her, and that other queen was still in the cage. She'd been there for about 4 days already, and they had larvae that was of age, but they accepted her. So I went back, and she was walking around. She was fine. So, but I guess maybe she was in there long enough. She was in there probably close to a week before I finally released her. Maybe by that time but the other queen was still in there, potentially laying. And I did check for queen cells and went back just to be sure there was nothing in there. But they accepted her. So
yeah. Now on that topic, do you when you smush a queen, do you throw her in? Or do you take the away?
Well, the first time I must not have squished her enough, and the second time I took her out, I squished her outside. She was definitely out. You know, I threw her on the ground, and
I throw like Mike. I throw them back in the hive.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't squish her enough, which I did, that's what happened to me.
I usually make a public display of it too. You know, I put her in a little chair, blindfold her, give her a little cigarette.
No, seriously, putting her back in the hive is advised?
I don't know. I don't know if it's advised. I do it.
Yeah. No, somebody told me if you kill your queen, if you have an aggressive hive and you have to kill the queen, put her on the front step so everybody in the hive knows that she's dead.
There you go.
The queen is dead.
In a little chair with a blindfold and a cigarette in her mouth.
The real problem with that, Ed, is finding the right cigarettes because they're very picky about what they want before they get shot. So no.
Menthol, menthol, you know.
Yeah. Well,
good evening, everybody. Hi, this is John Gutt from New Jersey, and I wasn't going to say anything, but since you're talking about squishing the queens anyway, what I do is I introduce the old queen to the new queen with extreme prejudice, as I describe it. And commercial beekeepers do this. This is where I picked this up. But they'll take the old queen, and the queens I sell to others, tell people to get the old queen, kind of squish the head of the queen in one part of the cage, JZBZ on one side, the screen and then the screen, and then squish her abdomen on another part of the cage. And I think that works pretty well for me. What happens is the bees, like you all were saying, I think they learn pretty quickly they've lost their queen. And there's also bees with obsessive compulsive disorder that want to clean up that net. And in the process of cleaning that up, I think they transition from the queen's old bouquet of pheromones and so forth to the new queen.
Yes.
That works pretty well for me. Now, the queen's still in a JZBZ cage, and she's not going to be released for another couple days. But at least it starts off with the old queen being squished against the new queen, and the bees transition to that new queen pretty quickly that way, I find. So that works pretty well for me. If I want to replace a queen right away, find the old queen, squish her against the cage, and then the new queen seems to, 90% of the time, nothing's 100% beekeeping.
So John, you squish her against a cage that contains the new queen?
Correct.
Oh, that just sounds awesome.
So her head has, a lot of mandibular pheromone in it. And, if you can get her head to stay on the cage, that's good. And then her abdomen, with the ovaries and everything else, there's a lot of pheromones in it, and bees seem to transition. Now, I don't know how much science is behind that. I'm only sharing it because it seems to make sense to me and it works for me. And since you guys were talking about squishing queens anyway, I brought it up. I wasn't going to.
I like it. I like it.
Because some people don't want it. Some people, that's awful mean to some people. But, what they don't get is the queen is just the set of ovaries for the superorganism. And she's more than that, right? But she is expendable.
Yes, that is correct. She's not a decision maker for sure.
You can use a toothpick too. I use a toothpick to suspend my cage, just pierce paler, put her and bail her right next to the cage.
That might work too.
This is all pretty good stuff. I like to say I've never heard the smearing the old queen on the new queen's cage. So
be careful who you talk to about that, because some people make fun of you for doing it. But,
yeah, I mean,
that's why we're doing Queen Chat. Please share, man.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm gonna write that one down just so I can share that one elsewhere. And because like I say, when I do kill a queen, I typically do throw her back in the hive. And I don't know why I do it. Maybe I read it somewhere. Maybe I don't remember my mentor ever teaching me that. Now, we were doing queens, 20 years ago, and I don't remember any of that going on. But for me, it was just fun to do. Is throwing the old queen back in the hive.
You have a sick sense of humor, Ed.
Yeah. I mean, it's the little things. It's the little things.
I have one more question about introducing, say, a new queen. Kind of a, I guess, somewhat unique scenario. So, say earlier in the spring, hives are building up. You've got a lot of, whether they're swarm cells or whatever the situation may be. So if you remove the old queen, you say there's swarm cells built up, just about capped or capped. You were lucky enough to find the old queen. Say you remove her and a couple frames and move her to a different hive to try to prevent the swarming. Say you didn't want to wait the time for that other hive to hatch a queen and have her go out and mate and then come back. Do you think, or just trying to understand, what would be the time frame that think would be, or the best way to introduce a new queen to that hive that you just took the original queen from and moved out in an attempt to prevent a swarm?
The hive that you took the queen out of will not swarm if it has no other queen.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm saying I don't want to wait the time for that other hive to complete the whole process of building their new queen. So if I just smash those queen cells that I saw there, I think I can introduce a new queen to that, in a day, or do you think there's
Yeah, the gold standard is hopelessly queenless, and then you can use a time release cage. So
Gotcha.
once you remove any option they have to make another queen, then you can put a time release cage in, and that's in the high to mid 90 success rate.
The problem is, I think what Greg's talking about, there still may be viable larvae in that hive, because if they're building queen cells, she's still laying, there could be possibly viable larvae in her.
So
I thought he said he took the queen out.
Yeah, but
my misunderstanding.
that was just when he saw queen cells.
So we didn't have time for the hopelessly queenless scenario this spring.
Sure.
So as we were putting in queens, we're doing the splits, putting the queen in. We found 3 of them that they never released from their cages, never ate the candy out, and actually raised queens and were laying when we went back and found them with the live queen still in the cage.
It's amazing they still took care of her.
The 2 of them, they raised the new queens. The one was the existing queen from the split.
Yeah, well, the candy in that plug will keep a queen and her cellmates basically alive for quite some time.
Oh, well, these had no attendance.
Oh, okay.
These are bulk purchased.
She just had the candy plug then.
You just had the candy plug, but they fed her. They fed her, raised a new queen, and then we took those queens out and installed them in other splits. They chewed out the candy and ate them, and were on their way. And that's after that queen was in there for a month and a half.
Yeah, I think that's another instance where the nepotism of some hives is just through the roof. They totally ignored that because it wasn't their own.
Right.
Well, that's fascinating that they left that candy. There was no plug, right, Mike? You're saying it was just the candy.
Yeah, just the candy and no attendance.
Huh.
And because my daughter's working the hive, and I just jokingly I said, "Hey, just make sure there's no queen in that cage down there." Nope, there she was. That was the first one we found, and we found 2 more after that.
Wow. So that was a good 3 or 4 weeks later, right? Because they raised an emergency queen. That queen went out and mated, and now she's laying. So that's got to be a month, right?
Oh yeah, it was over a month.
Wow.
But was the queen in the cage any good though?
Yeah, because we took them out and we put them in other splits, and they're laying today.
Well, I mean, the fact that they were basically
caged
and not being able to lay
for
all that time.
They cage them for 6 months up in Canada. So.
Yeah, if the queen lays for roughly 2 weeks,
right,
that fully develops her ovaries, and then if you cage her and under the 2 weeks, without her laying for 2 weeks, her her ovaries never fully develop and she doesn't become a good layer. But if she can get a full 2 weeks worth of laying in, you can cage her indefinitely. 3 weeks is best, but up to a minimum of 2 weeks of a laying queen, you can cage her and she'll be just as viable.
Yeah, Ed, I totally agree with that. I've mistakenly had caged queens in hives for an extended period of time and said, oops, and released them and they go to town right away.
Yeah. That's what, a lot of some of these southern queens that you buy that, just started laying and they're pulling them and putting, where they didn't have 2 weeks. And I understand why they do it. They're looking for the production. Now, some of your queen producers are a little more thorough when it comes to making sure they get, a decent amount of laying because they don't know when they're going to be laying again. But some of the higher production queen producers, running those little mini mating boxes, there isn't 2 weeks worth of laying in those minis.
Yeah.
So those ones, it's not great to clean up. Go ahead, John.
Whenever I sell a queen, I hand the people an 8.5 by 11 of written instructions of how to induce the queen. And I almost always sell the queens in JZBZ cages.
Sure.
And I always put a cap on top and there's candy in the tube. But part of it is, certainly I start off in saying that the hive needs to be queenless and sometimes have to talk people through to make sure that they're queenless. But with the JZBZ cages, I tell them to leave that cap on for 2 days. And then after 2 days, come back in, look how the colony is treating that queen, or that they look like they're accepting the queen, or are they trying to get rid of the queen? If they look like they're ready to accept the queen, then take the cap off and then let them chew through the candy. Candy is variable. I've tested some of my candy, and it might be my candy, but a strong colony will chew through that tube of candy in less than a day, less than 24 hours. I'll put it in the morning, come back the next morning, and they've chewed through that candy.
John,
other times the candy is harder, and it's got less moisture in it, and it takes more than 3 days for it to go through. So yeah, Ed, you're right. I mean, it depends on the candy, and unfortunately, it's a candy I got kind of thing. It's pretty thick, but if some are high humidity, strong colony, it can be going through pretty quickly, I find.
Do you make your own candy, or?
No, it's really just fondant that I let dry out enough so it's very stiff, if you know what I mean.
I do.
I just find that the candy is not a good timed release. So I tell people to leave the cap on for 2 days and then come back, take the cap off, wait another 2 days, and come back and see if they've consumed the candy and release the queen or not. So that's 4 days altogether there. And again, look at the colony to make sure that if the queen's still in the cage, that they're treating her okay. And then just go ahead and release the queen that way. That usually works for everybody. So again, my process, I tell people, is leave the cap on for 2 days, take it off, and then wait and come back in another 2 days to see if they've consumed the candy. And I also tell them, to the point earlier, that if you've got something going on, you can't get there in the 2 days, 3 days or 4 days is a lot better than 1 day. In other words, don't try to short circuit it. If you've got things going on, just let the queen in the cage a little longer. She'll be fine.
So Ed, you said about queen must be laying for 2 weeks, but you think if she's just in a cage for just a couple days, that 2 weeks is probably not really that critical.
I don't know that. Everything I've read, I won't sell a queen unless I have cap proof. For 2 reasons. One, I know she's not a drone layer, and B, I know it's been long enough that so I don't know. I don't have any experience of pausing a queen for a couple days within that 2 week window. So I can't speak for that. Do I think it would be okay? Sure. I mean, that's not an extended period. But I don't have any observation of that, or any literature I've read that everything I've read is 2 weeks is the minimum, 3 weeks is the best, and then you can cage her as long as you want.
Yeah, I
I think
remember
I introduced them shorter, but
when we were deciding what the catch cycle was for the queen program, we saw an article that showed that queens that were caught on a 3-week cycle had a higher success rate of introduction into the new colony than queens caught on a 2-week cycle. I don't know how valid that data was, but it was interesting. So another reason to leave your queen, for queen maters, leave your queen in their mating box a little bit longer.
Yeah, but George, the ones that you're releasing though, they're virgins for probably a week or two. So they're probably just at least when we did the queen catches, they were just barely laying, I think most of them. So,
well, the ones that were just barely laying were probably emergency queens and not the virgins, honestly. So anyway.
Yeah. And again, like I said, that it just, best practices. Could you there's with bees, there's a million ways of doing a million things, and some people can get away with more than others. For instance, most of my queen, all my genetics up here are similar, so my queens are very accepting of each other. So what I do here, I can't do elsewhere. And it's not. And I'm not bragging about it by no means. It's just that everybody has their own way of doing things. But when they're writing these papers and doing the studies, it's based upon the highest success rate, not the obscure anomalies, if you would. Virgins. So obviously, we're getting late in the season, but cells are by far the easiest to introduce. That's why most people use cells. You can get away without a lot of the timing issues that you have with virgins and or mated queens. And I've never tried them, but I would be next year. It's an interesting thing. Better Bee actually sells it looks like a queen cell. It's roughly 2 inches long, 1.5 long. The back has a little push-on cap, and the underside that goes down to the point, you take a piece of wax and you cover the end with a wax. You can put your virgin in there, and she'll basically reemerge in the new hive. Does it help? I don't know. It's called a queen reintroduction cup, I believe it's called. I've never tried them, but
Why don't you just walk her in?
Well, because we like to have a higher success rate, Charlie.
Well, I've tried it.
Yeah, I've done it.
It worked fine for me.
Now, Charlie, when you did yours this spring, how did you introduce your mated queens?
First thing was they were queen at hive. I pulled those queens out and they were queenless for 5 days. Then I went back before I put that cage in, and I went through frame after frame, shook all the bees off, cut all the cells off, made sure there wasn't any queen cell, voluntary queen cells, and then I put her in there.
So you made sure they were hopelessly queenless, then you put your cage in.
Yeah.
And again, that's
as far as the virgin goes, that's when I haven't raised any queens here in the last couple of years because of time constraints, but I have 2 frame mating boxes, and I started, instead of me putting cells in, I just went and let them hatch out in the incubator, and then I just let them walk on in, and most of the time, pretty much 90% take. So
yeah.
Do you put the queen cell she hatched from in with her?
No,
I do that too. I don't know. if that makes any sense or not, but
I just
I
put
do.
the queen cell on top of a JZBZ roller cage in the incubator. They come out and I try to get them out into that hive, feed them a little bit, but try to get them out of that incubator into that mating box as soon as possible.
Yeah, I do too. And then I put the JB, the cup in with her, in the nuke with her. Like I said, I don't know if that matters, but it's a personal thing.
Really, what else are you going to do with the cup?
Well, yeah, but
chew on it, Ed.
I mean, there's got to be some pheromones to it, right? There's something value of it.
Well, with a virgin, there's supposed to be none that I know of.
I found that the older virgins take better than the younger ones. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that with introducing virgins.
I'm sorry, say that again. What about the young versus the
how
older?
old is the old virgin versus the young virgin?
Old virgin would be 4 to 5 days old. A new virgin would be, emerged that morning or the day at a day.
Yeah, I mean that's when I would put them in. I would never keep them out 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, so I've had better success with the older ones than the younger ones.
Okay.
Yeah, after 3 days, that's when they develop their pheromone. So they start developing a pheromone after 3 days.
Okay.
So I've introduced a fair number of virgins, and I'm doing that. I was doing some of that today, but they're definitely older virgins. I mean, these virgins, again, were ones that emerged from cells, and I didn't really have any place for them. And I'm going back through where cells didn't take and putting the virgins in now. And I forget who said that it's like it was a Charlie that said like a 90% success rate. I'm probably there, not maybe 90%, but pretty successful. But really the key is to put them in a colony that hasn't had a queen in it. And I try to have my colonies queenless for a week before I put a virgin in, because if there was a queen in there, she could have laid an egg. That egg will hatch in 3 days. And then the bees could take a larva that's really up to 4 days old. I mean, that's a stretch, but maybe 2-3 days old, they could still try to develop a queen. She's not going to be a good queen, but they'll try to raise a queen. So my rule of thumb is a week of being queenless. That seems to help the success rate pretty well. Then I actually do a candy release again with them. I put them in a JZBZ cage with candy and put them in, which unfortunately today I had one fly away while I was putting in the JZBZ cage, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually within the first instar, which is up to at the end of the first instar, any of the genes needed to make that worker into a queen, they've crossed that road of that path of no return. So yeah, 4-5 days is the very end of any type of gene expression to turn into a queen. By the second instar, which is the second molting, that's day 4. Day 3/4 of larvae, they're not, whatever path they're going on is the path that they have. They can't change that road, no matter what you feed it, whatever they do to it. It's either a worker or a queen.
I found a queen in my hive this year, and I couldn't find her, and they kept trying to requeen her. She was the tiniest queen. She even looked smaller than a worker, and she was mated. She was laying, but they kept trying to requeen her. I couldn't even believe it when I saw her. She was like a sweat bee or something. I was just the tiniest little bee, and I grabbed her and squished her, but I've never seen a queen so she must have been really old larva they use. So it was interesting. But she got mated and she was laying, but just didn't like her.
Huh. Yeah. Again, bees will do some crazy stuff when they get desperate, that's for sure. And that's one of them.
I almost did a double take when I saw it. I should have gotten a picture, but I never seem to do it. You just react when you do it, and you grab her. And
Sure.
Hey, Ed, that queen reintroduction cell that you
I was
said
actually
that,
getting,
yes.
I was actually getting ready to share that, Greg.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is that for virgin queens, or what if you put a mated queen in one of those to try to, reduce the time cycle before you're
Your guess is as good as mine, Greg. We're going to buy some this fall, and we're going to play with them next year. So I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but the end has a cap, but the other end is just tapered like a queen cell, and then you covered the end with a little piece of wax.
right. So Ed, you have 1 million already spent queen cells. Why don't you make your own instead of buying plastic ones? I mean, it'd be interesting to compare how these would work versus some of like pure wax type queen cells that you kind of refill, right, with other queens.
Well, when a queen emerges in my incubator, I take what's left of that queen cell, ball it up onto the side of the JZBZ, so it kind of locks the cap, makes a cap seal on the cage. And even still, I think it'd be too short. So these here, you can wax the end, and you can put the queen in head first, and then seal it up.
Okay.
And it's $8 for a 10-pack.
So that's interesting. That says virgin queen introduction cell. So
I mean, we could start 3D printing them all winter, Greg.
I know, that's what I was thinking. There's so many options. Those push-in cages, with the little entrances on there. Maybe you put a wax cap on it. I don't know. I'm not sure what would promote better, introductions. But
yeah, like I say, I saw those last year, and it's a European thing.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be interesting to try them. However, just like most things that we have visions of grandeur, but when it comes to actually doing it, yeah, we just go with what we've been doing.
Yep.
So anybody else have any queen introduction tips, tricks? Because again, we're getting around formic time, and formic is the time to kill your queens.
I just want to clarify, Ed, you can't, your hive has to be hopelessly queenless in order for them to accept a queen.
That's generally true, yes.
Okay.
And there's with every part of beekeeping, there's exceptions to every rule. There's obscure instances where they don't have to be, and you talk to 10 beekeepers, and everyone's got a different opinion of how to do it. But generally speaking, the most successful you're going to be is your hive is going to be hopelessly queenless before you introduce anything.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So there's a question from Joan about can a queen be introduced to a hive in which there are laying workers?
That's a great question.
No.
It's a great question with a simple answer. No. You have.
Yeah, so the only luck I've had is by dumping in like an entire 5-frame nuke. Say if you had another 5-frame nuke or 10-frame colony, kind of put it right there in the middle or on top. That seems, at least it's worked for me on multiple occasions.
Got to be a strong nuke, though. I tried it one time with a weak nuke. It didn't work too well. But
a laying worker. So here's some interesting tidbit. A queen pheromone suppresses the bees to make queens. Unless, of course, and if she has weak pheromone, they want to make more queens. If she is damaged, which reduces her pheromones, or there's a problem, some other problem that they see, they want to make more queens. However, brood does not suppress their queen making desire. It suppresses their ovary, the laying worker situation. So brood will stop a hive from being laying worker. The workers will not develop their ovaries, and a queen will stop the queen the desire to make more queens. So if you remove your queen, they're going to want to make more queens. However, they're not going to want to go laying worker as long as they have brood. So even if you don't have a queen, as long as you can keep brood, the brood pheromone suppresses the ovary development in the workers.
So Ed, in that case, if you had a colony that was laying worker, and then you continuously started adding frames of open brood to that, would that suppress the laying worker,
Yes,
situation?
I do it all the time. I do it all
So
the
you
time
think
out
you
here,
could
Greg.
reverse it? If
Yeah,
you had a full laying worker colony, you could, over some period of time, 3-4 weeks, by adding that brood, it would then go back to a standard colony.
It only takes 2 weeks, buddy.
Wow.
If you put one frame of eggs in that laying worker hive and larvae, typically they won't make queen cells on it because they still think that they have the laying workers are still producing enough pheromones to not make queen cells. But by week 2, if you put another frame in there, they'll start pulling out cells. Once they pull out cells, they're ready for a queen.
Wow. I feel like that is not advertised as much, because I feel like once you go laying worker, it's like end of the road for that.
Well, here's the problem. Depending on how long it's been laying worker, they've already screwed up a lot of the comb. If you catch it early enough where they're only screwed up 1 or 2 frames of comb, it's very easy to reverse a laying worker hive without going medieval on it.
I mean, why not just take those 2 frames of brood and make a nuke out of it, honestly, where you're going to be almost completely successful to make a new colony. So you know what I mean? Like,
well, true enough, but if you and George brings an interesting point. However, a laying worker hive, it doesn't, in some situation, it doesn't have to be queenless, hopelessly queenless that long before it goes laying worker. So you can still have a viable hive that just needs a little bit of help. And backyard beekeepers, we hate killing hives. I don't hate killing hives. However, there's people that'll drag the sickest 1 frame hive into winter as they can, just because they can't bring it to themselves to kill it. So
I have a question. So if you're telling me that, and I understand what you're saying about putting in live brood and it shuts them off, but is it the live brood, or is it because they're fertilized eggs that shuts the workers off?
No, because you can put frames without eggs in there.
No, you're missing my point. Like, so when you have laying workers, they're basically just pumping out drones. Okay. But there's no pheromone there. But when you're putting brood from another hive in there, now you're shutting them off. So is it the fertilized eggs that are worker eggs? They're a larva. Are they the larva that shut them off, and not the drone larva? Because they're laying drone larva. So you're putting in brood from another hive to shut off the ovaries on your workers, your laying workers. But is it because of the fertilized larva?
Does it matter, Chris? I mean,
is
the alternative to drop a frame of drones in there and check it?
I'm just trying to figure out what pheromone they're smelling.
I think don't try. I'm going to suggest don't try it with a green frame.
I think there's a root pheromone.
Jeff, do you know the answer? Jeff's on.
I'm not really certain of the answer, but I think the larva does have a brood pheromone, and I believe that does play a role in kind of shutting off ovary development.
What Chris is saying, drone is still brood regardless.
That's correct. Right. But
So I don't really know the answer, but
Yeah,
the way I deal with laying worker, I feel like makes more sense than like putting a frame of eggs in every week. And I just throw one or more frames of capped emerging brood, and generally a queen cell, but a virgin queen I think would work too. And that really corrects it. And so like you don't need to turn off ovary production of the workforce, because as soon as that brood hatches out, you have a population of young nurse bees. The problem with laying workers, and like I generally catch them early. If we're catching them really late, they're basically dead. Like they don't live that long. That's the problem, is that you can get them queen right, but the population just dies off before the brood hatches out.
Agreed.
So if you add frames of cap worker brood, but like emerging brood, then you have a nice population of young nurse bees. They're going to be very accepting of queen cell, and they just get back on their feet. And then the workers that are laying there, they just kind of age up and become foragers, and they're waiting for somebody to take their job, right?
So will you put that queen cell in at the time you put the emerging brood in, or will you wait a week and then go back and drop the cell in?
It depends, if I have queen cells available, I'll just throw it in. So queen cell protector might be good in that case, but letting them hatch out and then putting that cell in is probably safer.
One time I had a situation, I just did a shook swarm. I shook all the bees into foundation, gave them a frame of emerging brood, and then a virgin. They accepted her, and again, I gave them no place to lay, so they had nowhere to lay, and they were too busy building comb. So, but I had it happen last week, and I just shook the bees out in the bee yard and took the equipment away, and there wasn't enough population to even justify keeping. It was just a nuke, but it's nice having extra bees and extra nukes, so you can do that. You don't worry about when you get a laying worker, but the nuke is the easiest way to resolve it. That's
But yeah, the old school, if you read any of the old beekeeping books, they'll tell you have to drive the hive several hundred feet away from the original hive location, shake it out, and do some kind of Indian rain dance of some sort, bring it back, turn it around upside down once or twice, and then repopulate it, and it'll be just fine. Where just like Jeff said, I found that putting brood, resetting the hive with some fresh brood, capped emerging, is easy enough to reset the hive. Again, it's a week or two process to get it queen right again, but you don't have to do anything radical. And just like Regina said, if it's too far gone, you just shake it out and cut your losses.
The other option is you can put the laying worker hive above a queen excluder on a queen right hive, and they'll go up and they'll pull out those laying workers. They'll kill those laying workers, and then you're protecting the queen because you're protecting your queen down below by putting the queen excluder. But they'll go up and the bees will take care of those laying workers, and it'll right itself also.
You don't think a laying worker can get through a queen excluder?
Oh, they can, but the bees down below with the queen right hive, they'll go up and they'll kill the laying workers, and they'll drag them out. You're just protecting your queen. That's from down below. You don't want if you have enough population in a queen right hive, they'll take care of it. The biggest thing is, for me, it's salvaging that comb, because that comb is your biggest thing. If I catch it early enough and I have larvae that's just been capped, I can tell that it's a laying worker. I'll freeze it before those larvae and the pupa expand enough to distort that comb, and then I can reuse that comb if you catch it early enough. But problem is people don't go in their hives often enough, and they don't catch it. So.
Yeah, it's good if your colony swarms, or if you know you're getting a new queen, know the timing, right? You should have a laying queen by this date, based on the age of the queen cell, or whatever your last inspection, and have a cutoff date. Where if you don't have a queen laying by a certain time, then you need to, put a test frame in or start thinking about getting a queen cell.
A lot of times I'll do it, even when I know that there's a hive that's like I did some Formic, I lost a couple queens. And even though I knew I had virgins in there, I'll put a frame of eggs in there at the time when I go in just to keep them going. And I actually had two of them that somehow the virgin didn't make it back and they started building queen cells. So if I hadn't done that and I waited longer, then I would have been even longer wait. So it's always nice having extra brood and extra bees you can do that kind of stuff with.
Yeah, so the laying worker was a good question because honestly, I think this is the time of year a lot of people that aren't as inquisitive with their hives are going to start going in their hives when they're going to see less and less activity in the front of it. When they go into, more than likely you're going to find it's going to, laying worker because they had swarmed at some point while you were at work, and it's been a month and a half since you've been in there and the queen either didn't return or didn't get mated, whatever the case may be. And you're going to walk into a laying worker situation. So great question. Great question.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to sort of not ask questions out loud, please type them in the chat. I'm watching. I'll feed them to Ed. So thanks, Joan.
Yeah, and one thing that Jeff brought up that I probably didn't mention, when you are using a queen cell, they make for those that don't know, they make the cell protectors. It's these little orange cages that fit over top of the queen cell. And what that does is stops the workers from chewing the side of the cell. And so that you'll know that the queen did emerge. And then she's going to have to fight it out with either the other bees or the other queen that's in there. So, that it's always good to, even if you're sure it's queenless, it's not a bad idea to use them. Now, when I sell a queen out of a mating box, I know that it's queenless because I literally pulled the queen out. So, I typically don't use them, but if I just was requeening one hive at somebody else's house, and whenever I sell queen cells, they always come with the orange cell protector. And most anyone who sells queens, you can request that you have the queen cell protector, and they'll make sure it's in the little orange cup.
I think it's a dud too. Some for whatever reason some queen cells are duds. So if you put them in a cell protector, and that cell's supposed to hatch on Sunday, and you look on Tuesday and it's still capped, then you know that didn't work. And that may be helpful. So I highly recommend putting your cells in your hives with the cell protectors. I see no reason not to do that.
I wish they'd make them bigger because sometimes my cells are too fat to even fit in there. So
yeah, just push it harder. You'll get in there.
Yeah, they don't need to come out, Regina. They just need to go in. So
push them in.
It does push them in, Yeah, but I agree. Like a millimeter or two wider diameter on that top circle would have been helpful on those.
We'll have to put a comment in the comment box. The people that make them.
Ed, you could just print a couple of them. Little bigger.
Come on, new business.
But I found the same thing, Regina. I just push them in because I'm never going to take them out, and I find it's fine.
I just worry about damaging them. So
I don't, because it's at the base usually where it's thicker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just push it in hard, and it'll be fine.
Okay.
I've done it for 2 years. The first time I was like, I think, am I damaging them? And I was like, no, it's at the base of the cup, and it's fine.
Yeah, once they're around day 14, they're pretty durable. I did have one emerge the other day. I don't know if I dropped it or what. It emerged without wings.
Oh no.
Really?
So, Yeah, it's like it was like a, and unfortunately, it was a humongous queen too.
And it got all the way through. It didn't die. That's interesting that it got emergence and it was that defective.
Yeah, now, like I say, I'm maybe a little rougher with my queen cells than some people are, just simply because I deal with so many of them. And this one here, just either it got jostled, maybe I dropped it, I don't know. But it was the first one out of, and since I've been rearing queens that emerged with no wings. And they weren't, they were there, they were just all jacked up. I say no wings, it wasn't an ant. It almost looked like withered wing, but you could tell they were just kind of
right,
like a deformed wing virus, almost like.
Yeah, something like that. But they were all in the same cell builder. They were all from the same queen. The odds of one, there was no mites in the cell or anything like that. But so yeah, I have to. For now, I'm just believing that it was because I was a little abusive with the queen cell. Because sometimes when I'm candling them, I'll give them a little shake. I'll give them a little shake so I can see the tail move back and forth inside the cell cup. Maybe that's a practice I shouldn't do. But by the time that day 14, oh, I got you, John. By day 14, I even have no problem just cracking the cup open like an egg, just to see the queen, see if she's changing color, and then I'll just seal it back up. If I open it up and it's still a larvae at day 14, I put it back in the incubator and let it ride.
Have you ever had one emerge that was still a larva
No, I've only had 3 of them, 4 of them this year that didn't emerge as larvae. I had one that didn't emerge. It looked like it died right around day 14. Now, again, maybe it was because I was jostling it around. But I had 4 that didn't emerge at larvae stage. And who knows? Maybe it didn't eat enough. I feel four out of 700 or so that I've done this year is pretty good. So I'm not going to try to figure out why until it becomes a number that starts to get a little out of hand.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple from Vince, and it was really odd. 2 of them were died at the larva stage, and they were beautiful cells. I mean, gorgeous long cells, and don't know what happened, but it's really kind of odd.
Yeah, they that's something that when you get a cell, you typically don't know. You have to assume that the cell that you're getting from whoever's producing the cells is viable, and it's as one of the queen, someone who's selling cells, it's going to be extremely difficult to most people that are selling cells, we're local, so we'll give you another cell. But if you were buying cells from like Corey Stevens or some of the higher end queen producers, they're going to sell you another cell just because they can't assume that the reason it died was because of that.
I tell people to look at 2 things when they buy a cell. One is that it should have some royal jelly at the top of the cup. If there's nothing at the top of the cup, that's probably not a good sign that cell starter was adequately fed. And secondly, the tip of that cell should have no discoloration to it. If there's any hint of any grayness or anything on that tip of that cell, that's not a viable cell. So they're the 2 things that everyone can look at when you're buying a cell, and don't take a cell that doesn't have royal jelly, and don't take a cell that's a little discolored at the tip. That's me. That's what I tell people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's worth buying an egg incubator too. Like we said, most of us hatch that we raise queens. We hatch them out in an egg incubator. It's $100 piece of equipment, but if you buy enough cells, it's worth it. Or if you start raising your own queens, I never put cells in hives. I always put in virgins.
Yeah, and I had a
Yeah.
problem, Ed, like a year or two ago. I had so many cells that weren't emerging, and this year maybe 2 cells didn't emerge. So I don't know what it is. You know, I am leaving them in the cells um in the cell starter
Builder.
an extra day. So I don't know if that, I'm usually pulling them on day, I guess, what day am I pulling them on? I should be able to do this in my head, right?
9. Well, 5
Yeah,
days.
10,
5 days.
10.
Yeah.
I'm pulling them on day 10 now instead of day 8 or 9. So I don't know. Anyway, that problem just sort of fixed itself, Ed. I don't know what it was though. Weird.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, where I was having 25% of my cells not emerge,
And any one of us that's on this call here that's producing queens, and when you start getting numbers like that, your head starts going into bad places. What it could be, what's wrong, what stage am I grafting from a bad queen? Is my incubator temperature wrong?
Right.
Am I pulling it too soon? Am I mishandling them? Is the humidity too high? Is the humidity too low? So your head is just and every one of us are going to try to fix four of the things that we think are problems at the same time, and we're just going to keep chasing our tail. But like you said, you just you don't have it this year.
Yeah, no, it's gone. The problem's gone. And it's like so much less anxiety now when you know all your cells are going to emerge, like they should, It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And and if you ask me like what was it? I don't know. Yeah, I think I thought it was maybe virus. I thought maybe I had some viral infection that was doing it. I don't know.
Sure. I haven't seen the most prominent queen virus is the black queen virus. And I haven't seen that in years, 5, 6 years, maybe.
I mean, you probably want to, even though we don't talk much about it, I mean, these bee viruses are pretty ubiquitous in all of our hives for the most part, at low levels, but how do you keep these viruses out of your cell starter? We don't talk about that much, but I guess you could get a cell starter that has a high viral load from something in it, just because you're moving brood from a hive that's sick into your cell starter, I don't know. I'm going off the.
That's a reason. That's a reason to keep your mite levels as low as you can, especially in your resource size where you're pulling brood from, right? Because that's probably transmitting the viruses. And I've had with the National Honeybee Survey and so forth, my colonies checked, and like I said, George, they're ubiquitous. I might, a couple years ago, I did not have black queen cell virus showing up. This past year, I had some showing up, some of the colonies. But as Ed's saying before, I sell a queen cell. I guarantee it to emerge, and I tell people if it doesn't emerge, bring the cell back to me, because one of the things I want to look for is the potential of black queen cell virus, kind of thing. So, I guarantee my cells to emerge, but that's good for local beekeepers and so forth. You're not going to do that shipping cells across the country.
Right.
Your point's good about keeping the mite levels low in the hives that you're, taking brood from for your cell starter or raising cells in, right? Either way. I had black cell queen virus about 4 or 5 years ago in my queen production. It wasn't pretty.
How long do you leave your cells in the incubator, or excuse me, in the cell builder itself? My schedule is that I graft on Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday morning, I take out the cells from the cell starter that I grafted the previous week in the afternoon. So they're in there, let's say I graft day 4, 1 day old larva in rod numbers, ideally less, right? But let's say it's day 4. And then they're in there for another 7 days, maybe 6.5 days. So that's day 10 for the queen. So then they're in the incubator really to the Thursday then, which really makes it more like day 14. I might be off on my math here a little bit, but I start moving the cells into nukes on day 14. 15 would be better, but I'm afraid that something will happen, weather, life, and everything, that I won't get them in, and they'll start emerging in the incubator. But the point is, I leave the cells in the cell builder for almost a week after I graft them.
Yeah,
I think that helps. Go ahead.
I agree. I graft on Wednesday, and I used to move the cells on Monday. Now I'm moving the cells on Tuesday. But I got a feeling that extra day is helpful in the cell builder instead of in the incubator. But I move them on day 10 then, right? 4, 10. 6 days after grafting, I move them. So
yeah, and then that's pretty much what I do too. And
it used to be 5, and then I moved it back to 6, and just because that's what my brain told me to do, and I don't know.
Yeah, so I pull mine also on day 6, the 6th day after putting it in, not the 6th day of emerging, but day 6, I pull and put them in the incubator. And then I'll put a new, because I run a queenless cell builder. So when I pull the cells out, I will typically put a frame of brood in. Day 7, the next day, I will check the frame from the previous week that I put in there with cells, just to make sure they didn't make any emergency cells. And then I'll graft into it, I guess it would be day 8, the beginning of the same day. I vary from Thursday to Wednesday, depending on what the weather is. So if it's on a Thursday, I'll pull them on that Tuesday, put a frame of brood in, check it on Wednesday, check the frame that I put in the week prior to make sure they didn't pull any cells out, cut down all those cells. And then that next then on that Thursday, I'll graft into it again. So it's a continuously week cycle, 7-day cycle.
Yeah, that works for me too. I'm using a double deep now for a cell starter finisher, and I actually try to put 2 frames of brood in there every week.
Yeah,
but I put it in the bottom deep. And then I have a queen excluder between the 2 deeps, and the cells go in the top deep, along with a lot of honey and pollen and everything. And the brood emerges in the bottom, and the workers come up. I used to put a queen excluder underneath that bottom deep too, to keep any virgins from flying in.
Yeah.
Because I've had that happen, but whenever you're moving frames of brood, oftentimes it has some drone brood on it, and the drones weren't happy with that excluder there. So I don't use that excluder anymore. I haven't had a problem, actually. I did have a queen fly in this year and start laying, and I could see it in the cells right away. They just weren't like they should be, right? They were okay, but they weren't like they were the week before, if you know what I mean, because the colony had a queen. They also had these cells that they worked on. But anyway, the double deep and putting frames of brood in the bottom and then a queen excluder on that bottom deep has been working real well for me.
Yeah, I think any one of us here that has been grafting for any amount of time has inevitably had a virgin or a mated queen fly into their cell builder.
Yeah, I have one this year. I waited that extra day, George, and sure enough, it came in and took them all out. I was so upset.
that's the only risk of leaving them in there an extra day, right? Is like, if I got in there the other day, maybe I would have saved them all, but it doesn't happen very much. Yeah, I'm a big queen right starter finisher with either a cloak board or double screen board on my cell starter. So that's the way I've been doing it, and I like the size of the queens I make. So, but we all have our system.
That's right. That's right. And forever it's been said beekeeping is local to your house, your yard, your neighborhood. So what works for you and your particular work schedule or timing or however, if it works, it works. Now, if it's not working,
well, you got to keep an eye on your quality, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, that would be under not working.
What, not watching your quality is not working, right?
Yeah. If you're producing these, runty queens or horrible queens or bad queens, that's not working.
Howard's asking if someone wants to raise 5 queens a year, how should they do it?
Find a queen breeder and get real friendly with them.
I used to do this, Howard, by getting a queen castle. When I was president the first time around, I was convinced that everyone should buy a queen castle. These is basically your 10 frame box that's split into 3 or 4 compartments, so either 2 or 3 frames, and you find a hive that's going to swarm, and you just pull the swarm cells and put them in the queen castle, and you make your own queens. And that's how I did it when I started beekeeping, and it worked, yeah, I'm a big fan of just using swarm cells, because swarm cells are the best queens, right? I mean, no, we're all trying to be as good as the bees are when they create swarm queens, and I don't think
easy now, George.
I don't think we do it.
No, we don't. When you say now, they make the most physically robust queens.
They make the most physically robust queens, correct?
Yeah.
But you're getting whatever genes that are in that.
There you go.
Correct. But if you have good genes to begin with, then you're only propagating more good genes. But yes, for sure, Ed, you're right. You're getting the biggest, most robust queens. But if you have a sort of a poorly tempered hive, and you're gonna use those queen cells to make more poorly tempered hives, it's probably not the best idea.
Yeah. They'll be pretty vigorous queens, because they're going to be huge. They're going to be laying like an SOB, but they're most likely going to be nasty if they come from a nasty hive. It's extremely difficult for a lot of people to cut off those giant cells, myself included. When you pull that frame out in spring and you see those mini look like pieces of corn.
They look like those mini Franks I have for New Year's Eve, those little hot dogs.
Sure.
2 inches long.
Another advantage of a queen castle I forget to ask the question, but I think that's a very good idea for a beekeeper to really learn a lot more about queen rearing in general, because, you can move a cell in and kind of watch the process of that cell in the different compartments of the queen castle. Some may be successful, some may not. So I think the queen castle is a very good suggestion, not only to produce queens, but to learn more about queen rearing.
Yeah, if you're somewhat creative, you could take a 10 frame box and make your own queen castle out of it. So you don't really need a whole lot of fancy equipment to do that either.
I've had good luck with the push-in cages when you pull out that frame that has multiple swarm cells on it, or emergency cells, whatever they may be. Put those push-in cages right over the cells. They'll all emerge roughly in the same period of time, and then once they emerge, that you're protecting from each other and the rest, and then you can kind of divvy them out if you're making splits or however you want to do that. But that's another way to manage those swarm cells.
Kind of hard if they're hanging down from the bottom of the frame, though, to use that.
Yeah, it depends the configuration for sure.
Yeah, those are the ones that are easy to cut off and just put into the mating box.
Yeah, and if you have a nice hive, and obviously you've done a good job preventing it from swarming, you could do a walkaway split, and they'll I'm not a fan of emergency queens in general, but if you do it when the flow's on, they'll make some decent queens for you. So you could use the walkaway split and make your queens, right? Yeah, so you don't need to graft, or just let the queens let the bees make their own queens.
Yeah, alternatively, you can, we're starting to walk down a different road, but we got the time. We'll just keep walking. Alternatively, instead of waiting for the emergency response, just take a hive and, with a queen, just shake a shit ton of bees in it, and they'll make swarm cells. You don't have to wait for the emergency response. Wait for the swarm response. Instead of them reconstituting, a worker cell, they'll make swarm cups.
I did that 3 weeks ago post harvest. I took all these bees, pulled off all their supers, and who knows, 3 weeks later they're swarming. I'm like, okay, So yes, Ed, that's you can feed a hive, right? Push them down, feed them sugar syrup, and you'll have swarm cells. Good point, right?
Yeah, and that's like a garden too, because you can keep cutting them out and they'll keep making them. I mean, it's like Brussels sprouts. No matter how many you cut off, they're going to keep cutting. They're going to keep putting some more Brussels sprouts in there. 6 to 12 days is the optimum time for a nurse bee to produce queen royal jelly. So, you just keep some young larvae, keep some young brood in there, and they'll make giant queen cells, swarm cells for a while. Most people who pulled all their honey supers now, just like George, they're probably in there now. You go out there and pick out a few, or just wait and pick them out of the trees, one or the other. At some point in the season, no matter how congested they get, they're not going to swarm. They know.
Well, the bees do swarm in September around here. There is a little blip, which I always thought was feeding related. Like these are just people that are feeding 1-to-1 in their hives. But no, I mean, bees naturally swarm in September around here with the little bit of nectar flow. I mean, it's death to everybody, but they do it,
Yeah. Neither hive benefits from it.
No.
George, I think a lot of those are absconding.
Could be. They could be absconding.
Yeah, because those fall swarms are always tiny, and I can't prove it, but I think that the fall swarms are these absconding
hives,
from beetles or mites. Because I mean, I definitely do see hives abscond, all year round from beetles. If the beetles get too bad, the bees will abandon ship.
That's a good point, David. Maybe at least a portion of the September swarms are absconding events.
Probably not the healthiest bees you want.
I got a little swarm like that through the winter once. It was like, I think it was maybe even October, but I put it in a new and I put about 25 pounds of dry sugar on top.
They were there in March, right?
Yep, they were there. They made it.
Yeah, that's not the point of the talk today, but you hive size your colony correctly and they'll be there in March.
Yeah. The going back to queens, and with Howard's question about how does a backyard beekeeper make 5 queens a year? And again, the queens themselves are easy to create. The bees just naturally want to make queen cells, especially early in the year, regardless of. I've even seen not so robust hives want to make queen cells in the spring, just because that's what they do. The second part to that is getting them. If you're using them to get mated, what do you do with that queen cell next? George made a great point about the queen castle. Now I've seen the queen castles that are split into 4 corners, and they use these half frames. I think George, you had 1 or 2 of those as well.
I used to use.
And then you used to put the frames back together with these little clips, and so you know the I think the more common way is to split them down to where you take a 10 frame box and you make it in with dividers and make it into 3 frame hives, you know, either one on each side, you know, an entrance on each side, you know, you drill a hole in each side and then one out the back or front, you know, just to segregate it and give them a different entrance nowhere near the other one. You know, a different bearing, you know, northeast, south, and west. So that's very productive. And then once they're mated, it, in my opinion, it's better to mate a queen in a smaller box and then move her and that frame to the nuke or 10 frame hive that they're going to, than it is to mate in a 10 frame box. That one of my observations, a smaller, for one, it's going to be easier to know where she is, you know, when she's mated, et cetera, et cetera. She's going to be easier to find in a smaller box. But one of the other observations throughout my mating up here is the smaller the box, the faster they mate. A 10 frame box, I've seen them go 3-4 weeks before I start to see eggs. Now, is it because I'm not in it as often? I don't know. I'm usually, when I have a queen I have a box that has a queen that's ready to be mated, I probably go into it more often than I should, just because I'm always curious. But I found the larger the hive, the longer it takes for them to get mated. And I don't know. And again, it may be because, you know, they wait till the brood level gets low enough. I don't know that, but it's just an observation I have. I run 3 frame deep mating boxes up here, and I can usually turn a mated queen around in typically 14 days. Pretty consistent.
I love queen castles. I think they're great. Margaret Zittel, when she left, she convinced me to buy one, and I have 3 of them, so I have 9, 3 frame mating.
Now, does yours have the entrances, one on each side and one out the back?
Yeah, it's a 3x3. So yeah, it's phenomenal. They're great. Yeah. And then what I do is, like, sometimes if I don't have, like, I have 1 queen, or if I take one out, you could take the dividers out, and that gives the other queen, like, if you don't have a place for her right away, she has more places to lay. So, and then again, if I have a 3rd queen, I can't find a place for her to take the 2nd divider out. So now she has a 10 frame box to lay in.
Yeah, and the other advantage to that is, since you have 3, you know, basically 3 little hives next to each other, if one queen doesn't come back, you know, you have brood from the other 2 that you can switch them over. You know, the frame that's emerging or empty, you can put into the hive that had the mated queen in it, and the hive that the queen never came back or never mated, you can put fresh brood in it from one of the other 2. So the queen castles are great for, you know, if you're mating anywhere from 15, 20 queens or 3 queens, it doesn't matter. You know, you just need more queen castles. Now, they're typically solid bottoms, and they don't have the entrance. They're the bottom board. The bottom board isn't like our standard bottom board. It's more of a closed up type of bottom board. So, you know, it doesn't have, you know, your typical entrance reducer, you know, all that's sealed up, and your dividers go from the top of the box down to the bottom.
There's a company that makes them with double screen bottom boards, so you can actually put them above another hive, like if it's in the springtime, and keeps them warm. I have some of those also.
Let me flip over to Better Bee. There's the queen cages, the ones that Mike, Mike, are you still on? The one I'm assuming that he said he carries them.
Yeah, he's still on, just muted.
Okay, yeah, I assume he carries them in his shop. B-Works.
Sorry, we don't have the 3 divided.
No, I'm talking about the introduction cages.
No, we don't.
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay.
We can get them.
I'm sure of it. So there's the 3 divided box, and then the bottom board is over here.
That's a good price too.
$28. Yeah, you get the deep and you get the slide out.
Is that Better Be?
This is Better Be, yes.
I got them last year, 10 of them. Yeah. They were the absolute worst construction and joinery of any box I have ever bought.
All right, so
my personal opinion.
Avoid
and they make you buy it in pieces and parts, so then you got to buy tops and bottoms. And
so here's the 4-way one that was popular at one time. It's divided into 4 sections. You've got these half deep frames. There's actually a company out there now selling the half deep frames, full plastic. And then you got the bottom board to match. So those they seal up against the dividers, seal up against these crossbars, and then you have an entrance, bearing each different direction, east, northeast, south, and west.
Yeah, I would go with the full frame mating boxes for sure for most backyard.
Agreed. Just for universally being able to switch them out with your regular
round for sure.
Yeah, because sometimes I break them down, then I just transfer them into a nuke. If I'm at a 10 frame, then I'll just put them at a double 5-frame nuke.
I got some used 3-frame, the 3 division from a guy. And he said it never worked. He only kept getting 1 queen every time. Well, here he had the entrance open across the front and no holes in the side. So whichever queen would go around and that's why he only got 1. But
you gotta love it.
Yep.
Nice. So again, this time of year we're coming into August, the dog days. Things are hot. Things are dry. I say dry. We had some couple days of rain up here in Pottstown, at least. I don't know about your regions. Keep an eye on your queens for sure. Robbing is going to start to become an issue if it hasn't already. When you're doing your inspections, during a robbing event, a lot of times the queen takes damage, and the hive typically during a robbing event, if there's any, usually the weaker hive is the one that gets robbed out. The queen either dies or tries to leave and can't fly because she's still a laying queen. A lot of the workers will go back with the robbing hive, and now you've got some fresh, clean, dry equipment to start next year with. So again, when the hive gets robbed out, typically the queen becomes a casualty. Some of your more intense mite treatments, your formic, have a what's the average on that? 10%?
Somewhere between 10
at least
20%.
10-20%.
Yeah, no.
Depends on the temperature you're starting at.
Sure, George and I were talking about that. We at least I think we discussed the fact that we don't believe it targets the queen. She's just a casualty of the bee death because it does kill a lot of bees. It kills the grass out in front of the hive. It kills a lot of things. Kills mites also. I mean, that's an advantage. But she, sometimes the queen becomes part of the casualty of the bee death. You know, whether she wasn't in the right spot, she took on too much formic, whatever the case may be. I don't know. I don't think Apigard has the same queen
Mortality.
yeah, queen fatality
Yeah.
as formic does. But you know,
Well, I've also found with the formic is they remove all the brood and people think they're queenless, and they need a new queen, and I say just give them another week and a half, and then they call back and say, oh yeah, it's a beautiful brood pattern, so
yeah.
They think they lost their queen, but they didn't. I think that happens, if it's 10%. Or say if it's 20% of the formic kills, 50% of that 20% is not needed. Those queens aren't needed.
Yeah,
they weren't actually killed.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other problem is the formic is on for 2 weeks. So by that time, your virgins probably have already emerged if she got killed right away. So people aren't in right at the 2 week. Those queen cells have maybe been broken down and they didn't know that the hive had already requeened itself. So there could be a virgin running around.
So those of us that are on the call that sell queens or cells, myself, Mike, I don't know if Regina's selling any more queens.
Yeah, I do.
We sure we can sell them the queen and take their cash, but I think we have a fiduciary to the backyard beekeeper to, give them a fair warning before they give you 50 or 60 bucks.
Definitely.
Just my moral compass.
Every year there's 20 or more queens I could have sold that don't need them, and probably another 10 that just never called me back and told me they didn't need it.
Yeah. Like I say, it's nice to have the extra cash, but I don't like selling queens to people that I know are just going to kill my queens.
No, I actually had a guy I sold the queen to, and he literally went home and he went in his hive and he found eggs. I said, "Bring the queen back. I'll keep her."
That's why I tell them to bring them back as long as they're in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good policy. And if you're looking for someone to buy queens from, ask them questions like that.
Yeah.
If I go to put this in and I find the queen, can I bring it back? And just like Mike said, as long as it's in good shape, don't. And it looks like the one that you sold them.
Yeah. Hey, there you go, Ed. Now I got it. Ed, I'll come buy 10 queens from you and bring it.
Give me a shit.
When you look in there and there's a marked drone.
Yeah. Why does it have yellow paint when I just sold you a green one?
Yeah. And it's a dude. So yeah, and again, that those are the stuff that, because we're in beekeeping. We sell honey, we sell queens, we sell bees. It's a hobby that can have a financial benefit to it as well, more so than a lot of silly hobbies that we create. If you're a crocheter or some kind of metalsmith, where you're making things but you're not really getting any money. Beekeeping can be a lucrative hobby as well, but we're all, our moral compasses should be pointed in the same direction. Don't just do it for the money. I'm not gonna elaborate any more on that, but so yeah, when you buy a queen from somebody, make sure the person you're buying the queen from, is a legitimate queen person.
My
the
first
other
question.
thing I do I really try to make sure that whoever's buying a queen really needs a queen before I sell to them to begin with, right? There's a lot of beekeepers that think they need a queen, and like others said, oftentimes waiting a week or two will prove them wrong. I got an email yesterday from somebody that wanted to do a split now because they thought their hive was pretty strong and everything, and they wanted 2 hives. And I said, well, I got queens I can sell you, but I really suggest that you wait until the spring to do the split. That's a natural time for bees to reproduce, be much more successful then, kind of thing. So that was a relatively new beekeeper, and so it's kind of new information for him, if you know what I mean.
Sure. A lot of us have horror stories. I had a lady, we'll get into storytelling now. I had a lady text me, asked me for a queen. This was only 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Asked me to buy a queen and enough bees to start a hive. And and this was going to be her first hive. It's not like she had 10 hives and she wanted, a backup hive. And, I made it clear that you need to take some kind of beekeeping class or something of that nature before.
I had somebody ask me for it, wanted to buy a cell and wanted me to mark the queen in the cell.
Oh, okay.
I told her there'd be an extra charge for that.
For sure.
Marker and put her back in like Ed does. Open it up, marker, put her back in.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Hiroshi's done that. Hiroshi's on the call. Hiroshi's marked like day 14 or 15. Whatever, queens put him back in the cell and let them emerge. So it's possible.
George, I didn't think about that. I wasn't thinking like that.
I know Scott said he's let his queens, he's taken them out as pupa and let them emerge, or let them just develop right without outside the cell, right in the incubator. Just pulled the queen out, and yeah.
Really? What day?
I don't know. That Ed, you know? I know Scott said he's done that before.
No, but a lot of your lab studies, when they're doing queens, they typically have a petri dish of royal jelly, and they will lay the larvae on top of that in that petri dish, and the larvae will just grow inside that petri dish. And I at some point when they go to metamorphosize, I don't think that works out well for them, but I've seen several studies where they're raising the larvae in petri dish of royal jelly. A worker, like I said earlier in the show today, workers get fed on demand as they need the food. The bees feed them. Queens, however, just get copious amounts more food than they need, and it's a different food. So,
did you ever draft those drone larvae and graft and see if they build out cells from drone? You've never.
No, but yeah, that's right. We George and I, we talk stupid shit every now and then. And one of the things we actually, I wondered what would happen if I grafted a drone into a queen cup. Would it make like these monster drones? Or would they just abandon it? Greg, are you still on?
John would know the answer to this. John, what happens if you graft drone larvae and put them in a cell?
Well, I've never done that. I never even thought about doing it. But we were talking about laying worker hives, right? So laying worker hives will try to raise queens, right?
Correct.
They'll build queen cells, and they'll feed that cell copious amount of food.
Right.
It's royal jelly, and that larva will develop, and it'll, I usually cut them out before they're too long developed, right? But they do develop. Now, sometimes the cells get super long because the drone larva keeps falling down in the cell. But I don't know.
Yeah, because drones are raised horizontally, not vertically.
Yeah, but but laying workers, they make a cup. They make a cup, and a laying worker will lay an egg in there. It's an unfertilized egg, and they'll draw that out like it's a queen cell. And I've certainly had people call and say they've got laying workers, and wanted to get a queen, and then say, well, I don't need a queen now because they're raising their own queen. Well, they're not. That's a drone in that cell, and they say, oh, it's a super big, nice long cell. No, it's not a queen cell; it's a drone cell. Now,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. I should let them develop a little more to see what they really developed into.
I had that happen last week. I emailed Mike because I actually had them building queen cells, and I had one queen cell that I opened had 8 eggs in it. It was a queen, like right down the swarm cell position. They were building queen cells, so I couldn't remember what the heck was going on. But eventually I let the larva develop, and they were drones, but they were building queen cells off of laying worker eggs.
Yeah, I think George, remember if you were talking about your one cell builder where they had a queen, you knew there was no eggs up there, and they started building cells on a different frame.
Right.
Because the queen's not the only egg layer in the hive.
Right.
But no, I forgot all about that, buddy. I have a hive that still has.
You're not talking. Put your head straight. Yeah.
Yeah, like I say,
it must be your one side that doesn't have.
Every time you turn your head that way, we can't hear you.
Okay, no, yeah, I was going to say I forgot that George and I even talked about that. And I have one hive that still has a little more drones than is necessary.
I think you should do it because I can't even get them to accept the grasp when I graft worker larvae.
Yeah, I will. I really will. I'm wondering if I should keep it vertical or somehow get them horizontal.
Here's Jeff showing something.
Yeah, this is my photo. So that's a drone. That's a laying worker hive raised. Yeah, so they get at least that developed. Although I think I have another picture of them, like basically ready to emerge. So that's a drone.
Bigger than an average drone? Like,
I don't think so. I mean,
super drone?
Maybe.
Because a queen cell cup is bigger than a drone cup.
Yeah, but I guess the genetics would probably, the fertilized egg female would have. It's almost like they have 2 sets of genetics, and depending on what they're fed, it could go one of 2 ways, and either worker or queen, and the queens are going to be larger. But the drone really only has 1 set of genetics for growth, if I could put it that way. So it's gonna grow to its normal size as long as it's fed.
Well, that's not necessarily true, John, because I run small cell beekeeping, and my bees are literally smaller because the cells are smaller.
Okay. And that is true for workers. So I'm kind of thinking about the drones here, but.
Well, no one's ever screwed around with it, so I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Well, I'll try to grasp some. Then I'm going to send them down to Dave Starkey in North Carolina to evaluate and see what he says.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make these drones that look like bumblebees.
It's also
super drones are going to be very competitive in the drone congregation area.
Oh yeah, it's going to be like
what happens when they mate?
It's going to be like a bunch of basketball players.
But in a laying worker colony, they're not really being fed like fantastically, probably, right?
Yeah.
And then they are in a laying worker colony. Those cells are smaller, so the drones are not smaller too.
Right.
Yeah, no.
By the time we have the next Queen chat, someone's gonna do this for sure.
Well, yeah, and I just put a graft in yesterday, so.
You need to have enough drone. You probably don't have enough drone larvae this time of year, though.
Well, that's what I was saying. I do have one hive that still has drones in it.
I think if you drop a green frame in now, I'll bet you she'll lay in it. A strong enough hive. Yeah, a strong enough hive. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
George and Ed and everybody else, thanks for doing this. I'm going to drop off now, but very interesting. And good
John,
chatting with y'all.
Are you a member of the CCBA or?
Yeah. So that's, I guess why I got the invitation.
What's your last name?
Scott, G-A-U-T.
Okay.
I joined a number of years ago whenever you had a conference, and I attended the conference. So.
And you're over in New Jersey?
Yeah. And there's other beekeepers in New Jersey. I'm in northern New Jersey, but there's other beekeepers in New Jersey that are closer to you that are also members.
Well, I'm not looking at visiting anybody. I just wanted somebody to talk to. Yeah. One of the advantages we have of the Queen chat, which, I was hoping maybe it was a little more chatty than it was, but, we George, myself, I speak to Regina often. We could talk Queens for days, but at some point you run out of people to talk to. And we were hoping to re-energize or rejuvenate Queen production in our region, because it's low, honestly. The three clubs, or at least the two clubs, Montgomery County and Chester County, have some sort of Queen program available for the club members to collect queens, whether it be mated, cells, or virgins. And the more of the local genetics we can get out there, the better our region is going to be. And if we know we don't need to import queens, they're not saying that local is 100% better, because you can make some real shithead local queens.
Right.
But it takes a couple generations for it to really adapt to our climate. And and if a queen breeder that has queens that are several years old, and we're still breeding from, the genetics are going to be a little more localized. So just like Italians are Italians because they were locked into the Italian peninsula by the
geography.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the mountain range on the north side of
Alps.
Is that the Alps?
Alps.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that locks them in, just like the several other
African.
The several
Okay,
other
like the Cape honeybee or the
Sure.
different. Yeah.
And they're adapted because they're geographically locked into these zones, typically by mountain ranges. And if we can keep our genetics local, are we going to create a northeastern United States bee? No, we're not. There's too many shifting of queens. However, if you buy your queens from a reputable local breeder, or just a queen producer, I have to believe that we're going to make a better bee.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I've been raising. I have 6 lines that I've been maintaining for probably every bit of 5 years. Not the same mother queen, but I'll select daughters from the mother queen and then start using them the next year. My white line queen, I've been using her for 3 years. So she's like 4 years old. I know I need to replace her, so I'm going through a selection process there now. I'll make the final selection next spring, of course.
Sure.
So I really haven't brought too much other genetics in, but I'm starting to bring some grow sensitive hygienics in, and that seems to be working out pretty well. I mean, it's not a silver bullet, but still need to treat. But day before yesterday, I did a Harbo test on one hive, and it scored a 4. I was really concerned about it because I did an alcohol wash on it, and it had 22 mites and 300 bees. And I was like, oh, I've got to treat that hive, and I was going to treat it with formic, and I might lose the queen with the formic growth, right? But I talked a little bit with Corey Stevens, and he says, well, try a Harbo test on it first just to see, and then you can treat after that. So I pulled 100 pupa, didn't find any mites. Pulled another 100 pupa, still didn't find any mites. So that's a high scoring.
That's good. Yeah, that's good for July. I'm gonna do my second Harbo test mid-August to really push.
So
So
where
make
did
sure they
those
have a good
mites
mite
come
load.
from, John? If they weren't in the brood, why is that hive?
So that the mites are just walking around them, and they're coming in from other hives probably too.
yeah, they're for phoretic for sure.
So they're not
And,
so the thought is that they're not reproducing in that hive. So these mites, the 22 out of 300 bees are coming in from other hives.
It's a lot of drift though.
Yeah, but I got to,
I trust a Harbo test.
Drift in the yard. What's that?
I trust a Harbo test.
Yeah. The result was so good. I kind of questioned myself, but I'm sure I'm doing it right. I'm looking in the cells. I'm looking for mites. I'm looking for offspring, and I'm also looking for mite excrement. I'm not finding, that wasn't present. It was amazing. Now I've got another hive that I want to test too, so we'll see. And but I guess the part of that point is that I was going to get ready to treat it, and I'm glad I did the Harbo test. I'm going to hold off. I might come back and check
Did you
it again.
brood share at all, John? At all?
I don't put brood into that hive. I would be pulling brood out of that hive for nukes or whatever. Yeah, but if I was brood sharing, yeah, it could come in that way. But the mites might have been in there. I understand a phoretic mite will live in a hive for quite a while.
They will.
So that.
And again, that may have been the only 22 mites in that hive. You may have got them all.
Yeah. So I'll test another hive, but I did select Royal Central Hygienic Queen, and I've been drafting from that queen all summer too. So, I've got somebody coming for 5 queens tomorrow, so they're getting 5 different lines, and one of them's the Royal Central Hygienic, and I'm going to ask them to watch that one and do mite counts on it and report back to me if they could. So,
what are you selling? What's your price for a mated queen?
$60. They're marked, and that seems to be that's just fine with everybody here.
Damn it!
I know that's steep. I know that's steep, but and maybe what I don't hear is people know I charge 60 and they go someplace else. But
sure.
I think I enjoy it. Well, like the 5 queens I'm selling tomorrow, the person's getting them from me because they have 5 hives that are overly defensive, and I have a reputation of having gentle bees, which is one of my selection criteria. So they're coming for gentle bees, gentle queens to 3 queen these hives, and so paying $60 for gentle hygienics seems to be worth it to them.
Sure.
How much do you sell your queens? What's the price there? What do you sell yours for?
I've been selling mine for 50. And I know I'm undervaluing them. Next, now and friends and family get a different price.
Yeah.
But
they get your leftovers.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, it's after 9. Do you mind if we quit recording? We're gonna go on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because again, we're now it's basically just queen chat, just open chat. Anybody has anything they want to talk about with queens. John, I will be in touch with you because when you start doing some more testing, I'm a testing freak. I do the liquid nitrogen, the Harbo. I just started doing the UBO this year, and having great results with the UBO. I'm going to do another fall test of the same colonies with the UBO. Kira seems to think it's going to be less, but she's probably right. But
why does she think it's going to be? Why is she going to think it's going to be less in the fall?
Because she says because it is. She says that's how it is down in North Carolina. So, she said don't be, because I've got a lot of. I tested 5 colonies and 4 of them scored in the high range, and
very good. Yeah.
She said don't be surprised when you test in the fall. that the scores are lower.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true because I haven't, this is the first year I'm using it. And I'm hoping it doesn't get less, but you know, I don't understand why their response would be less in the fall than they are in the spring.
So talking with some other beekeepers, and I've used the UBO too, and I guess I've got mixed results with it. You know, some of the hives that I should have scored higher didn't, and the hives that had a Arbo score of 4 really didn't get a good UBO score. I don't know why. It could have been the applicator, me, but so I kind of, and I've done a lot of UBO. Well, I've done a fair. It's kind of expensive, right? So I've done a fair amount of UBO testing, but